with the Fantasy Grounds Academy. I'm going to go through some of the steps on using the new book or campaign builder, previously known as the reference manual or reference manual builder. So essentially, to access this area in Fantasy Grounds, if you are the host or the GM, or you're the person who's creating the content, you'll have access to a section in your library, and this is called books. So when you click on this, this will show all the books that you have loaded in your library in regards to the reference manuals or to the main parts of the book. So I have the bestiary, I have the SRD data, and I have the magic items open in the modules area for reference only. Once I'm done, or if I don't need those, I'll unload them. So I can go to activation, and then I can go to this load filter and unload these. I really don't even need them at this point. And when you have a lot of stuff loaded, that can be very confusing and also unnecessary. And you might even create more overhead than that's required. So I'm doing a lot of custom homebrew content here, so I really don't need much at all. However, if you want to test out NPCs and those sort of things, you might need that data. But for the time being, I'm just going to be working with the text editor and that sort of thing. So when you want to create a new campaign, you click on this campaign reference book and it'll open this up, and then you can start plugging in your chapters and stuff. It's good to have a good handle on what content you're going to build before you start doing this. I realize that some of you don't have that foresight, or you've already gone, deep into your campaign. If that's the case, just make a copy of your campaign folder, rename it, and then start from there and start building and salvaging the stuff that you want to keep, and then get rid of the stuff that you don't, and then export it as a module when you're done. In this case, we're starting from scratch, and it's nice to have a kind of a structure for this particular work. So in this way, this makes it so much simpler to build all the assets and such when you have kind of an arrangement here of how you're going to build this. So I have like a GM crib sheet, which is just a list of names, things, places. This is just really helpful for GMs to get into the game and really start going. So what I might do here is link some of these other sections, such as the NPC sections, to these areas to make it a quick access point, kind of like a shortcuts section. And this kind of just gives you an overview of some of the main content in whatever adventure or accessories that you're running in your game. So if you make something like this for yourself, this will make it easier to run adventures. So even if it's a store-bought adventure, you can make something like this, and it would just be full of links and useful information for you to run your games. So that might be something you do instead of creating a whole content or a whole book yourself. Just create yourself a little crib sheet and then put some links in here that will link to the applicable maps or the sections in the adventure that you want to pay particular attention to. You can evolve it, you can change it, but I think if you had a running list of all the different chapters in your book and just kind of take the stuff that you want and drag it over, I think that'd make it useful. So that's kind of what this crib sheet is for, is to give you a point of reference so you can drag different links from whatever module you're running or your custom content or both into one area. The next thing is obviously the index. So this gives me a nice breakdown of all the different sections in this adventure. And if you need to or want to, you can pop out each individual page and link those here, so you can have just straight direct links to all the different sections in the module to make it quicker to get to those points. And having this kind of reference is really helpful when you want to jump around in an adventure. And then I have a game setup area where essentially this is for the GM so that we can give them suggestions on how to run the adventure and give them some ideas of the content they might need and give them some tips. So this is kind of like your setup. And these are just the beginning, the intro parts of, or even before the intro. And then we actually have the introduction, so that will be the setup, the adventure overview, the background, the adventure hook. So those are all the different steps that I use for adventures, just so I have a good starting point. And then we start getting into the adventure itself, where they arrive at the village, they meet with the main NPC Torvin, they gather information, and they prep to go to a mine to rescue uh, a young boy who is actually his godson. Brand is his name. So then you go to the mine, you enter the mine. There's a navigation section about the upper levels. You discover the goblin. I don't know what this was supposed to be, but I think it's the scout. Yeah, you discover the goblin scout. So that got cut off somehow. And then, or maybe it's the motives. I don't remember. I have to look. But then it gets into the deeper mines. There's a goblin prisoner, which is supposed to be, actually, this is the scout. And this one up here is discovering the goblins. So the premise of this adventure is that a young lad named Bran essentially wandered off. He's exploring around the mines by himself, and he was asked not to. And he gets abducted by the goblins. And your goal is to just go and rescue him, but you find out some other things along the way. What this really does, though, is it kind of just touches on some of the adventure design a little bit, like where you have a starting point, you have the middle, and the end. And it was very basic adventure. One of the other things I was hoping to do with this is to insert some instruction or some help for new GMs and players that are going to be using Fantasy Grounds. So the main part of this in this village would be to get your players used to moving their tokens on a map, getting them to set their character sheets up with shortcuts down here on the bottom, so that they can quickly access things like their top 2 or 3 skills, and perhaps to advance a turn for like next actor, you can drag that down here, and then also their initiative roll. So those are just little steps to kind of help the players get used to the interface and to prepare for gameplay. And you can set this up to where this also has a couple skill checks, just some real basic skill checks that they can roll on their character sheets. And that way they kind of start getting the idea of, making checks and stuff. So this wouldn't even necessarily be an ability check. This would be just a raw skill check. And then as you go further into the adventure, you would get to the skills tab where they have proficiency. You might even have tools like thieves' tools and such, and give them opportunities to use those and to do some troubleshooting, problem solving, role playing, those sort of things. So I would use this part of the adventure to illustrate that part of the gameplay, and getting them to start thinking and playing in character and using their character sheet for their special abilities and some of their proficiencies in the skills or tools that they're familiar with on their character sheets. If you're going to do this as a one shot, I think I would probably build maybe 6 NPC or 6 characters, have those ready to go, so they don't have to spend 2 hours building characters, and kind of have them set up around the adventure so that the things that you want to illustrate are going to come through gameplay. It's not just going to be a bunch of randomness. So this is more designed to help people understand how to use the platform more than it is like an adventure, but it kind of teaches them by playing. And I think a lot of people prefer to do that than actually go through a class. But this would just be a kind of a way for you to introduce people to the platform and to play, and also get a feel for where they're at in their, where their knowledge is, like how familiar or comfortable they are, and those sort of things. So that you would use an adventure like this just to kind of gauge, if you want to play with the people and those sort of things. So I think that's an important step in forming a table or a group of people that you want to play with for more than a couple sessions. So use the adventure like this to kind of set up a training kind of session, like a session 0 almost, and just run it, people through it and see how they do, refine it, get some feedback on it, and make it to where when people play Fantasy Grounds, they use this adventure to kind of get their bearings until they get comfortable with the layout and with the way the UI is set up. And in that way, it'll be a lot easier if they play on someone else's table or if they decide to run their own games. So they're going to put in some tips in here for GMs along the way. So this would be stuff that's more related to Fantasy Grounds, not so much the rule set, because I think enough people have resources for that. I'm not really trying to teach people how to play D&D. I'm more or less focusing on how to use the platform. Even though I'm using D&D as the catalyst, I think it's important to learn the interface as well. And there's a lot more similarities in the rule sets than one would know, or straight out of the gate. You have to kind of get used to it to understand that, but once you do, it gets a lot easier. So the third part starts getting into when you rescue the young boy. You get us some pretty heavy battles there, and this is where you could learn about targeting and learn about your strategy and utilizing your spells and your special abilities or features. So this would kind of provide that experience, I think, for newer users, and that's kind of what this adventure is for. It's not very big. It's meant to be played in about 3.5 hours or less, hopefully. And I've scaled it to where you could have 4 to 5 players, levels 3 or 4, depending on how many people you have. And then I have Torvin as an NPC, but the DM can run him as an extra in case you only have like 3 players. So that's nice to have that contingency in place. So if you only have like 2 or 3 people, you might be able to wing it if you have to. I think that's important too, is to kind of be prepared for those sort of things, because once in a while you get people that'll ghost you, or they can't make it, or maybe they're having technology issues at the time, or their internet's down or whatever. So it's nice to have that assurance built into it. So I have Torvin here, who's this miner. He's the quest giver, but he's also equipped to help out. So if you need an extra, you have an NPC that you can play that would go along, that would kind of help the players. And he's got a kind of an investment in this because it's his godson. Basically, he's an old adventurer. His friend had passed away. He took ownership of the brand and kind of raised them himself. And now this kid's missing, so he has to go. He's basically hiring you to find the kid or to help him. So this would be a way that you can get the NPCs more invested in what the players are doing if you need to, and it helps with the cohesiveness of the story and the immersion. So this is a way you can do that, and then you can do this in any rule set. Just make an NPC that's somewhat playable in case you have that missing person. And every once in a while, you'll have to adapt a current NPC if you have one, or introduce one at this point where they come in and help, and maybe they'll become a player character later on or something like that. So it's important to have that kind of in the wings in case. You don't always need those. It can just be an NPC and just leave it at that. But I think it's a well established way to keep things going in case. So I made all the NPCs here already using the Fantasy Grounds import tool. And then I took my index, which is this piece here, and I popped this out of this whole page. I popped this out. And then when I was doing that, I was taking each one of these and copying and pasting these to build this index here and to build the chapter. So this is all of the stuff that goes into the adventure, and including a legal section and the OGL license. So if you're going to market this and put it up somewhere, you'll want to have that at the end. But essentially just kind of setting up an outline and building to that. That's really helpful when you're building from scratch. Or like I said earlier, just make a crib sheet or a reference sheet for your adventure, You put all your names, places, and things in here, and you can put links and things to maps and images and just do this per chapter. So as you go through the adventure, you have all your notes here and you can reference them and there'll be links to them. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a module or anything, but it just whatever helps you reference to make the information accessible and a lot easier to find instead of going through the entire module looking for one thing. So there's that. So this is really the gist of making a useful reference for yourself or creating an adventure or whatever you need. So in this case, I'm going to use this to help me teach people how to use the platform. And the only real way to do that is to organize it and to get people on the table and use it. And I think I'm going to present this to use for our Founders Day celebration that's coming up. So I want to run something like this for the community for, do a couple sessions, give new people a chance to try it out and to maybe bring one experienced player in to help out. But essentially just use this adventure to run a short, 2-3 hour session. And it doesn't matter if you get all the way through it or not. It's just getting people on the table connected and then getting them to interact with the character sheet and the interface. That's really the biggest hurdle when it comes to gameplay and using the platform. Once they get through that, it just gets to be second nature, a lot easier. There'll be some times where they get confused on how a spell works or when they should roll and that sort of thing. You can kind of guide them through that as needed. But generally speaking, use a really basic encounter and do a couple sessions with that with your players. See how they do, and you can theme it for whatever adventure you're going to run. So if you're going to play Cyberpunk or whatever Pathfinder, you can run a little short adventure just to see how it goes, and you can kind of bring that into your plot if you need to help with that consistency and with the immersion. And I don't know it would be a good idea to have something completely disjointed from your adventure, but it doesn't have to be directly related. Or it can be related to one of your players. Perhaps you have a rogue in your party and you need to help him break out of jail or something like that. That would be a really fun way to play together and work as a team and to break the guy out and kind of give him incentive to want to travel with your group. And, perhaps he knows some information that you need to know. So there's a lot of cool things you could do with one shots or with a session 0 adventure where you not only are teaching people how to use a platform, but you're also building up your story. So that's just some things that I've kind of been putting together in Fantasy Grounds. And the main thing is to get your outline, build all your assets. So assets would be like your NPCs, your tables. So I have a few tables that I have to input from the content that I've generated earlier. So there are some ways to make this type of thing a little bit easier for yourself when you're copying and pasting, because essentially that's the majority or the bulk of the work is copying and pasting, and then also setting up your maps and preparing the artwork. But I think those are the 3 main pieces of this is well, 4. You have organization, you have your images and tokens and maps, and then you have all this text where you're going to be copying and pasting. And that's really the bulk of the work there. And it helps when you're organized and you practice. Because if you don't practice, it's very difficult to remember how to do the formatting and, what steps to take and that sort of thing. So I'm going to actually take this panel or treat it like a panel and put this over here on the right-hand side of my screen. And that's going to give me, basically, this is going to allow for me to put up another screen, so it's easier for me to copy and paste. So I might take something like this, and then let's see what we got here. Yeah, so I don't want that, but so we'll do something like this, and then put Fantasy Grounds here. So this is kind of a way to make it easier to copy and paste content. So in this case, I'm gonna take some tables and then make those into like these rollable lists. Instead of opening and closing the window a gazillion times, it's easier just to have a couple panels that you're going to work from and just do this and just go back and forth from here instead of trying to have this full screen. So if you have Windows 11 or 10, you can create these panels and just go back and between those, make it easier to copy and paste. You can do this with a PDF or whatever you're working with. So I'm going to make a new group here. So this is going to be a new category, and this will be let's see, this is the, what do we call this? Rescue in the abandoned mine. So I even made some lore for the mine itself, so it kind of has some sense to it. You don't have to, but it helps if you're going to expand on it. So there's some reasons why the mine was abandoned, you know, why the goblins went in there and took over, you know, all that sort of stuff. So that kind of helps down the road if you want to expand on it. So I made the group here, and then I'm going to take this import text tool down here on the bottom. And I try to zoom this Fantasy Grounds in a little bit more because it's hard to see the text. So this is at 110% over here. Fantasy Grounds is at 105%. And since I'm not running a game and I don't need all that real estate, I'm just going to be doing it like this, I think, from now on, because it's hard to see what's going on with the text. And I realize that. And one of the things I had asked Smiteworks to start doing is to zoom into their content so people can actually see what's going on, because I know a lot of us will have it kind of zoomed out and it's very difficult to see that. So I understand the frustration there. So this is a plot hooks rollable list is what I call it, but this is actually a table. But I'm not going to tell the AI that because it'll it'll try to create a table and I don't want a table. So I'm just going to copy and paste this part over, the title up here, and then this entire swath of text. I'm copying and pasting this over to the table area. And what this will do is create separation so that I can have a row and columns. And that's kind of what this pipe is for. This pipe symbol is the separator. So I need to tell the table importer this. So if I go to delimited, I'm going to select pipe instead of comma, because if I do a comma, every time there's a comma in this sentence, it's going to create another division or column. I don't want that. And then the column for the header is there, and the table ranges are on the left. So this is the header, and then over on the left, on the other side of that divider, is the range of numbers. And I kind of wanted this to be double digit. I don't know why it did single, but I usually do double digits on single digit numbers just in case, because I don't, sometimes 10 and 1 get confused. So that's why I prefer that in formatting. So I'll go ahead and hit import and we'll see if it did it correctly. It looks like it. So here's the plot hooks, and just kind of roll on there just to see what it does. Yep. So that's just a quick way to do tables and make it easier. So that was the plot hooks, and I can operate the same way and already have everything set the way I want it for parameters. So this is modular encounters. So I'm just going to copy and paste this in. And once you have all the text formatted the way you want, or the way that Fantasy Grounds needs it to take advantage of the parsing and that sort of thing, this gets a lot quicker and easier. So I'm going to copy this information. I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I should have asked the AI to make sure that these are double digit, but it's no big deal. And these are all correct, and hit import. There we go. So there's the modular encounters. The next table is Dwarven Shrine effect. So there's a section in the adventure where they find or they might potentially find this Dwarven shrine, and there's some effects associated with it. So I probably will make the effects coding for those just in case. So I'll have to do that later, but these would be like spell effects, and then you could drag them to the players and make it a lot easier to use. Because some of these give them plus temporary hit points, advantage, advantage on saving throw versus fear, and +1 to AC. So these are things that you'll have to probably create something for it to make it easier to run, so you're not having to do it manually throughout the game. So I'm going to go into another table, and there's the effects, and this is just a rollable list for right now. So I'll probably link the effects to it just so it's convenient. Okay, come on now. So copy and paste. Control copy, Control V, and then again, put that 0 in front. I don't know if that makes any difference, but sometimes it does when you have a whole big list of things like 1 through 100 or something. You want to have at least 2 digits. So import, and there we go, that's that. And then I think I have one more. So Goblin puzzle solution. So this is another table that the GM can roll on to vary the type of puzzles that are involved with the game. So this helps with the replay value, and it gives them ideas on how to kind of make this interesting. So this is in the second part of the adventure. There's a potential area where you might have a puzzle, and this kind of gives you just some solutions for those potential puzzles. So the characters must arrange a series of stone tiles to form a specific pattern. Their characters might have to light a series of braziers in a specific order. The characters must place a set of colored gems in the correct sockets, and the characters must manipulate a series of levers to redirect the flow of water through a complex piping system. So this is just this thing's to make the adventure more interesting and has a higher replay value if you have some variety here. So there we go. So there's the tables. So this is just why the import tools work pretty well. Tables are pretty universal in regards to Fantasy Grounds. The NPC import tool is not. That depends on the rule set. Some rule sets have import tools and some don't. So a lot of the times you're going to have to hand enter NPCs, depending on the rule set, of course. But in this case, this is a 5e rule set. It has an NPC import tool function. It really depends on how well developed the rule set is, how well it's supported, and the way that Fantasy Grounds works with it. So there's some factors in there. So that was just creating. So the NPCs are done, the tables are done, and now I'd have to go in and create some. This is the index. We've already dealt with that. Here's the appendix. Already dealt with that. So there's loot. So items is probably the second or third most annoying aspect of creating content for Fantasy Grounds, because there's really no shortcut. It really is copy and paste and a whole bunch of work. So do yourself a favor and don't make too many custom items if you can help it, because you're just going to be spending hours and hours and hours of doing this. But it is a necessary evil, but you're going to find that it's better just to use existing content and just copy and paste those. So when you need an example or a template like that, if I go into modules and go to activation, I'm going to load up the SRD again, and these will give you just some basic equipment and such, so you can kind of look to see how they're built. So you can take these items, make a copy of them, open them up, and see what's going on. So this is a rusty dagger, okay? So instead of trying to create that from scratch, I'm going to look for a dagger, and there's one right here. So I'm going to make my own group, and you try to use what's already there first before building a completely new thing. So what we call this is we'll call this the treasure and loot from the abandoned mines. So this is just a header for it. And I'm going to take this dagger and make a copy of it. So all I have to do is just left click, hold down the mouse, just drag it back into the same list here. Now I have this copy. So this is how you edit or make a copy of an existing record. So now that this is like this, I can open it up. I can unlock it. The original that's part of the book is you can't, in some cases, yeah, like this is read only, so you can't do anything with it. But if you make a copy of it, you can unlock it and edit it the way you want. So this is going to be my starting point for this dagger. So I don't have to do much here, just change the name. So Rusty Dagger. Oops, wrong text. Rusty Dagger, okay. Let's see, it's common, so we're going to put that there. A simple melee weapon, it is a weapon. It's already got these properties, so all I'm going to do now is under this, under here, I'm just going to take the description here and copy and paste that into the bottom here. And that's just going to give us a starting point and makes it easier to do this work instead of starting from scratch. So this is going to be a header of some sort. There we go. So that's just a way that, to kind of speed up making items. There isn't really a good way to do it, but this is about as quick as you're going to get. Unless you know how to edit the XML and all that stuff. I don't even get into that. But now that we have Rusty Dagger here, I'm going to left click and drag it to my new group here. And I don't have any of these selected. I just have them opened. And then the item that I just made, I'm going to bring that over here. Oops, I did the wrong one. So that one is going to go back to the SRD. It's this one, Rusty. There we go. I dragged the wrong one over. So there we go. So now this has its own section here. And now there's a crude map of the mine. So this is going to probably have to be from scratch. But what I'll do is I'll take a scroll, I guess. This is probably a good starting point. So I'm just going to look for a scroll, which is right here. And I'm going to make a copy of it. Let me see if there's a map. That might be even closer. Nope. In this case, there's some adventures that will have a basic, just a map entry, but scroll is close enough. So that's a scroll adventuring gear. Yep. So again, I'll make a copy of it. And then I'm going to drag the copy into my new group. And then edit the name of it, unlock it, and we're going to call this, this is the crude map of the mine. So what I'll do is, oops, I didn't want that. All right, so then adventuring gear, standard, rarity is common. It's worth 1 gold, which sounds about right. Okay, so what we're gonna do is just put this detail right here. It's not a wondrous item despite what this says. I think adventuring gear makes more sense. And then just copy and paste this stuff here into the description. And then just use these as kind of like your headers. And then if you wanted to not identify it, you can put a non-ID name there if you want. You can put some notes in there if you have to, but that's basically the map. So you get the filter off here. So this is how you make items essentially. You're gonna take this and either use existing items or build them from scratch. So let me go back to all, and I'm gonna do a pouch. Since this is a pouch of herbs, I'm going to look for a pouch and just make maybe a component pouch and just make a copy of that, and then use the drop down from here on this list and just copy and paste that over to our new group, and then open this up, crack it open, and we're going to call this something else. So this is a pouch of herbs. I think it's adventuring gear. I don't know why this AI thing assigned it wondrous item. It makes it sound like it's magic. Okay, so there's 25 gold. I think this one would be probably worth 5 because it's not really a component pouch. It's common, so the herbs in there are common. And then I'm going to replace the text from here and just use the stuff from the description down here. And I see that there's a character can expend a use of the herbs to regain an additional 1d4 hit points. So what you might do with that is create an effect and link it to the item so that when you do award that to the player, you can just drag the effect onto their actions tab instead of having to manually deal with that during a game. So you want to link that kind of stuff if it's applicable to what you're doing. So that would be another spell effect I'd probably create if I want to make this more convenient for myself and your players and such. So there's your pouch of herbs. So there's your item. So there's a few items that we've made. How much more do we have? Oh, geez. Okay, so this is what I'm saying. If you like this potion of healing, I don't need to recreate that. But what I'll do is I'll make a copy of an existing. So let's go with this and let's go to healing. So I don't need to redo this. So I'm just going to make a copy of it and then take this item and then drag and drop the copy into my list here. So I don't even have to redo that one, which is nice. Anytime you can save yourself time, that's a wonderful thing. So now here's a small carved idol. So this might be a wondrous item. So let me look for a statue or something like that. That might be a good starting point. I don't know if there is anything. Nope. How about an idol? Nope. How about just a trinket? Anything, come on. Nope. All right, so this is where I'm going to make one from scratch. So I'll just drop down to my group here, get rid of that search term, and just add an item. So when you create a new item from scratch, when you change this type, that changes the fields depending on what it is. So this is just going to be a wondrous item uncommon. So we'll say uncommon. Probably should require attunement because it does give quite a benefit here. So I'm going to say in parentheses requires attunement. And I'm doing that for balance. So you can't just pick it up and use it. You have to have it in your possession for a bit. I would say it's worth at least 100 gold because of its magical nature. Probably only weighs a pound. It's like a little statuette. So small carved idol. And I'll put statuette. Stat statuette, small carved idol. Okay. And this will be adventuring gear. And then down here we'll have the description. So again, this is another effect that I'm probably going to have to build. Because as an action, you can call upon the idol's power, granting themselves or an ally +1 bonus to AC for 1 minute. The idol has 3 charges and regains 1d3 expended charges at dawn. So I'd probably make this item an effect of some sort and put all that together. So all you have to do is drag it onto the character sheet, onto the actions tab. But I'm still going to include this description on here. But what I would do is build the effect and then link it here so it's more convenient for the game master or the player to drag the effect onto their character sheet on the actions tab. You don't have to do that, but it's helpful. So this is basically, I'm going to actually bump that up to 250 because that's quite a powerful item actually. And it is magic. Yep. So this is going to be a wondrous item, not adventuring gear. So wondrous item. So this is a category essentially. Now if you put weapon or armor in here, it's going to change the fields. So it will allow you to add your bonuses and such. But in this case, it's just like a statuette. So uncommon requires attunement. So that means if you pick it up, you got to attune to it before you can benefit from it. All right, so that is that. And we already did the healing. So the mysterious note, I don't know if you necessarily have to have this, but it would be interesting to pass that to a player. So instead of making an item, you can possibly make this like a handout, or you could leave it as an item, but then also make a graphic that shows this. And you can hand this to a player, like just drag the image to that player. And when they read this will be a crumpled note. And it says, the hobgoblin's influence grows stronger each day. We must be ready to strike when the time is right. The boy is the key to our plan. So someone wrote this out. It's probably in Goblin, but it says it's written in Common. So I might change that because these are goblins, or perhaps this comes from their overlord who does know Common. But this is a kind of a plot piece here. And so you have to decide how you want to handle it, but it's a story item. So does it need to be an object? Maybe. But you want to make sure that you either have an image, an item, or both. And that way you can have this easy to hand out to somebody. And then the picture, like having the actual little note, isn't as critical as having the information. But I think for immersion and just for to keep the story kind of interesting, I think it would be fun to have something like that. So I might generate that using an AI tool. So I'll come back to my session here, and this is Goblin Rescue. What I want to do is take this information and copy this in here. So I'm going to say create an image of, comma, and then I'll say get rid of some of this, a crumpled note of a rustic. So I want it to look kind of old school. Written in Common. I'm going to say Goblin because I don't want them to be able to read it right away. And what I'll do is require that the player has Goblin in there on their character sheet. So when they look at that and I hand it to them, they're like, I can't read it. And I'll say, well, do you know Goblin on your sheet? And if they say, yeah, then I'll copy and paste the text to them in a private message or something like that. So the note reads, I'll say in Goblin text. And then we'll see if it can interpret that. So I'm going to give it some parameters, photo, realistic. And then I'll say expert, dungeons, and dragons, character, art. I'll say rustic and tattered crumpled note. We'll see. So this is ChatGPT 4.0. Before I was using, this is Claude 3 for the writing part. So this is, yeah, it's kind of cool. So this isn't exactly what I wanted, but this is kind of cool. I like it. So I might use this as the handout for it. You know, just kind of give it the feel that you want, and I can just actually reword this. So what I might say is like this, and I'll reword this a little bit. So I'll just say, instead of character art, I'll just say art, and then I'll get rid of the text part of it, and we'll see if it interprets it better that way. But I do like how this turned out. It just isn't quite what I was looking for. I think this one over here on the right looks a lot better. And I like, even though that this looks messed up, like jacked up, I kind of like that because it looks like whoever wrote it is having problems, which is look, influence. So perhaps it's like broken common, you know. So this, I'd let it fly. I wouldn't sweat because if it makes it harder to read, that's what I want. So yeah, this is even better. So this is kind of cool. So this is exactly the type of handout I'd like to see in a game to hand to my players if I needed to. So what I'll do with this, since I might want to use that, is I have already a kind of a cheat area, you know, for Canva to kind of stage the artwork. So here's some of the artwork that I'm working on for this. So that's just like items and loot. So I might put that here. Hey, Dan, what's up? And this will be just kind of where I'm staging the artwork, because later on I'm going to make tokens and all that, but I want to get it in one place. So I'm not looking all over for it. So like these will be some of the hazards. These will be some of the NPC records, you know, for the tokens and such. But I'm going to go back to this, and I think this looks pretty good. I like that. I also like this other one. So I actually might grab that one too, because that one looks kind of cool too. So these are just little handouts that I might use. I may not, but these are little things that I might attach to the images, or like when they find loot, I might share this image with them. You know, it just depends on what kind of story you're telling, and you know, the message you're trying to send. So that's that. Now there's a treasure chest. This would probably be better served as a what do you call it? A kind of like a parcel. But if you wanted to show this, like actually show the treasure chest before they get into it, you could possibly make this into an image. So I might go here and I'll say maybe change this one. So create an image of a rustic and battered, instead of tattered, battered wooden chest. near, I'll say in the Goblin Chief's chamber. And get rid of some of this. Of a crude, I'll say crude, and battered wooden and iron bound chest. So you might want to show the chest, like during the adventure. So if it turns out okay, I might add that to my collection of images, and then later on, what I'll do is I'll take all of them and edit them and kind of generate those, and yeah, it works kind of. I want it to be a little bit more realistic looking, so I'll say recreate as there's nothing wrong with it. It looks pretty good actually, but it doesn't match the other styles. That's kind of what I was looking at. Is you don't have to be that picky for for just a homebrew thing, but I kind of like the artwork to match a little bit. So that's just me being picky. I mean, I could settle for that. That looks pretty damn good, to be honest. Realistic, recreate the photo above, but more realistic style. We'll see if it understands what I'm saying here. Sometimes when you do this, it's just best to re-prompt it and not try to reiterate on the image above, because you could be talking about 20 other images too. So if you do that too much, it kind of loses focus. Yeah, that looks a lot better. So I'll go ahead and download that, or copy and paste this and put it into Canva and use this as my kind of like my staging area for the artwork. This is kind of what I'll do when I'm making images for games. Just kind of get them put in here, and then later on I'll resize them, and I might cut out the background and use them as tokens or something like that. But for the time being, so this is kind of where you get where you start losing time, though. So right now I would stick with this, like building all the images, doing all that first, and then instead of switching back and forth between making items, and that's where you start losing time. So here's another reward. So the map, the treasure, brand's gratitude this would be more like a story reward. So it's not really experience, but there is a way that you can award quest items, and that's probably what this would be. So description: brand gives each character a small hand-carved wooden figurine as a token of appreciation. So this might be something he has that he made himself, that he carved, that he gives the players. It's not really a value like treasure wise. You can build the item and then link it to the quest item. But this would be an example of using a quest item instead of treasure or something, as like, or you solve the puzzle and you get 100 XP or something like that. But so that you could do that. I think what I'll do though is just make a parcel, but what it implies though is that he gives each player a small hand-carved figurine. So are they all the same? Are they different? You don't want to get into all that. So I think I'll just make one item and then link it to the quest item. And that way, if you need to award that, you have the item and you also have an easy way to distribute it instead of one item at a time for each player. You make a parcel, do the same thing, and just adjust the quantity before you award the players through the party sheet, and that will make it quicker to distribute also. So that's just building this stuff. Like this treasure chest wouldn't take a whole lot. but being that it has this mechanic here, it probably will make the item and then link all of the stuff here, and then use that picture that I had to kind of give them the immersion. And then I would actually build the parcel and link it to the item. So this is kind of complex for what it is, but I think what I'll do is I'll illustrate that. So to make things quicker for you in the long run, if you spend the work now doing it up front and before you play, it's so much simpler to handle during gameplay, and you don't have to do it again. If you wait until game time to do this stuff, it can be annoying, because who wants to spend another hour making stuff after the game or having to do this right before the game starts? It's way too much work. So don't paint yourself into a corner. And if it's not that important, don't even worry about building it, to be honest. But the main reason I'm doing it now is so that I'm making stuff after a game right now. Yeah. I mean, it's inevitable to do that. I mean, there's not much you can do if you're not always going to be planned for everything, right? So you do have to make stuff, but doing that every single time is really exhausting. So when you have a little bit more foresight and more organization, you'll have to do that less. You're still going to have to, regardless. I'm just saying that in regards to cutting down your workload is, do some of this work ahead of time if you can. But you can't always anticipate what's going to happen in the story. You have to build things as you go. It's inevitable. It's part of your GM duties. But I think having some of the stuff built ahead of time really cuts down on that. Especially like this. I know this is the treasure I'm giving out. It's not random. So this I can build now. So what I'm going to do is go back to all. I want to see if there's a chest that I can start with, please. Yeah, scroll of secret chest. What is that? Okay, so there's a chest. I'm just going to copy and paste that, or just make a copy of it, and then I'll drag the copy into the correct category. Open that up. Crack it open. We're going to just rename it as the Goblin Chief's treasure chest. Yeah, weapons. Most weapons should be easy to make a copy of. I mean, it depends on what it is. If it's magic and all that, it's different. But okay, so adventuring gear, standard. I'll just say, what is this? It says rare. I don't think that's, the chest itself is probably not rare. I'll just say uncommon. I don't understand why that would be rare. Perhaps the value, I'll leave that. It's 25 pounds. And what I'll do is, let's see, adventuring gear. I'll copy and paste just the description, and this is kind of like mechanics. So I'll just go ahead and put that in here. And then what will happen is I will build the parcel too and put that in here. So this is kind of just a list, or just an idea of what's actually in here, So here's your list of items that are in here. And then what I'll do is, in this case, I would build out the parcel to make it easier to award the players, especially if you're going to continue on. So you're going to create a parcel, and again, I would make a group. So this would be the rescue. You could probably put this somewhere so you don't have to keep copying and pasting, or so you don't have to keep typing it out. But rescue in the abandoned mine is the adventure. And then take that, and we'll create the parcel. So this would be the Goblin Chief's treasure chest parcel. And it says 200 gold. So that's simple enough. You're just going to add the treasure there. But now when you go into items, what I'll do is go to all. And now I want to I want to bring up that shield. +1 shield, just make a copy of it, and then take the copy and drag and drop it into your list. And the next item is a scroll of fireball. So scroll of fireball. Right there. So make a copy of that. And then again, take this copy and drag and drop it to your loot area. So this is your items, right? So now that I have those copies made, I'm going to drag and drop those into the parcel. So here's the shield, and here is the scroll of fireball. So that's essentially all the treasure in here. The 200 gold, +1 shield, and a scroll of fireball. So now that you have that, you can link this to the actual item. So that makes it easier to access it when you need it, instead of having to go dig through the interface looking for it. And I think that's where a lot of adventures or adaptations kind of go. I wouldn't say they go wrong. They're just going off of what they're given. But anyone who's played and used Fantasy Grounds knows about this kind of thing. And it's very annoying to me if I have to go in and find that parcel. It should be with this item. That's the way I look at it. But some people don't know the platform well enough, or they're going off of the actual content they're given. And there's nothing in there that cues them to say, well, link this parcel with the treasure. There's nothing that tells them to do that. But if you've used the platform and you've run adventures, you'll notice these little things. And this is one of the things that I believe makes adventures stand alone, and also makes them better and more useful and memorable. Because if you have to dick around and find everything and stuff, I think that's a lot of extra work. I think if you have the foresight and you know what you're doing and you have an idea of how this thing plays out when you're playing, it makes it easier for you to adapt it to your needs. The official content isn't always going to have that, because it's not clear or cut and dry in the beginning. No one knows to do this unless they played. There are people who are converting content that probably have never even played the rule set, which is fine, because they are just doing the basics, like putting in the content. There is nothing that says, take this link and link it over here, and this link and link it over here. The only caveat to that, if you do this kind of thing, is if this breaks, then that's broken and everything else behind it. So make sure that everything because if you link this to a story, and this is, let's say the parcel's broken, you can't just fix this. You have to fix the parcel, you have to fix this item, and then you have to fix the link in the reference manual or wherever you linked it to. So that's the downside of doing that, is if you make it too refined, then anytime you need to update it or fix it, it's a hell of a lot of work. Because now if I actually have an image on top of that, and I link the image to this so that we can use it for a handout, now you're adding another element to it. So image, parcel, item, link into the product or wherever you have it. So that's something you want to avoid and be careful of, because the more complex and the more links you have, the likelihood of it being harder to fix goes up. So just be aware of that. When you add these conveniences and such in there, it might be an inconvenience later on to have to update and fix it. So that's something I've run into myself. I painted myself in a corner doing that. And I was pissed off at myself because I made it harder for me. And that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make it easier to run the adventure, not anticipating having to go back and update everything. So if you're doing a project for yourself, probably not a big deal. But if you're doing a commercial product, be careful on how much effort you're putting into it, how much time. So if this was a commercial product, I don't think I would link this in here. But if it's for you and you know what you're doing and you created this, then I would definitely put this little conveniences in here for yourself, because this isn't going to matter. If it breaks, it's on you, right? But if it's a commercial product and you have to fix something, fixing it all the way through is a pain in the ass, because you got images, you got parcels, you got items, you got, it can really be messy. So just kind of be aware of that. So if you change something here, you have to change it all the way through. It's not going to dynamically update. And that's something I believe that a lot of us don't realize in the beginning. The same thing with NPCs. If you change something on the master NPC record and you already have it tied into encounters and they're already on the combat tracker, you have to update all that stuff too in most cases. So if you change the name of a NPC while you're in the middle of playing, it's not going to update that dynamically unless you redrag it over. So there are things that you need to understand about how the records work and how they can impact your workflow and the ability to update. So just kind of, just be careful, because it can really piss you off, and that's not what you want to do. Trust me, I've made that mistake so many times. And so anyways, I'm putting this here because I want it there. I know it's there, and if it breaks, that's on me to fix it. So that's just a caveat that you would run into when you're making content. If you make it too detailed, you may have problems updating it or a lot more extra work. So that's just something I would do for myself. And those are the little tweaks and the little things that make this a lot easier to play. So here's a conclusion award. So Torvin's award is another type of thing I would do. So I have a picture of the ring, which is this thing, I believe. Yeah, that's up here. So that's a photo that would be attached to the item after I make the item. Then the parcel would be attached to the item as well. And then this parcel would be linked to something or somewhere in the adventure, probably near the end. So if anything breaks, you got to go through all that stuff, make sure all those links are correct. And that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that the more you add to it, the more difficult it is to update or to maintain it. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're going for simplicity or you're going for complexity. And then you also have to think about how much time it's taking you. Like, I don't need to add all these images to every single record, right? That's kind of a waste to me. I don't think it's necessary. But if it's a major plot point or something you really want to tell in your story, then yeah, go ahead and make an image for it. But that adds to the the chaos potentially. So anyways, that's all I got for you today. I don't think I need to go any further. I think I've rambled along too much already. So if you guys are interested in participating in our 7th annual Founders Day weekend, that's coming up on the 26th to the 28th of this month. We're just looking for people to run games and hang out and direct traffic and maybe set up a lesson or two. I don't want to make a big deal out of it, because we've tried that in previous years and it really just doesn't turn out. Like, just not enough participation, or people get all weirded out, they don't show up or whatever. So I just want to recognize the community that we've built together, and it's been 7 years. And I've asked Smiteworks to put it. I think they might put it in the newsletter. We'll see. And then also I'll give out a couple prizes, and I might run this adventure I'm working on a couple times. And I'm working with Chris from Game Tile Warehouse. We might run the Death Arena, which is going to be kind of like a arena combat type thing. We'll see. We'll see what I have time for, and I'm also inviting some guests. I'm trying to get Monument Studios to do an hour-and-a-half show with us, and maybe someone else. So maybe I can get Adam Bradford. Who knows?